thankfully I came across your program, and no word of a lie, like it's been priceless information.
Welcome back to another success story here at FAJIG. My name is Jörg, which is German for George at Find a Job in Germany. And with me today is JD. JD has a story to tell of how he joined the program and, of course, how he found a job in Germany. JD, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Thanks, Jorg. How are you doing?
Also, very good. Thank you so much for making room and sharing your story with everyone. Folks, before we jump into some relevant content here. For your information, we're recording two sessions from this. And the first one, where we will be talking about now, is about JD's challenges, the problems that he was facing before he found his job. And second, if you want to follow up with us, this is going to be really interesting. JD ended up getting two offers, and we're going to talk about choosing the right employer when you are faced with two offers. So, but I'm getting ahead of myself. JD, how about maybe I introduce yourself a little and then you add up to that, depending on what you felt was missing. You are originally from Canada and you are a QA engineer. You are 28 years old, nine?
No, I'm 31 years old now.
I'm 31 years old. Sorry about that.
That's
You're
okay.
31 years old and you already came with tangible project experience into the program. You had already worked as a QA before,
That's
and
right.
your stack was mostly focused on Selenium, but you also had experience with other tools. You can also maybe talk about that later when it comes more into the technical side of the interview rounds. What have I missed? Anything that you'd like to add?
Sure. Well, just broaden everything that you just already said. Right out of Canada, when I arrived here, I was 28 at the time when I moved here, and then I worked as a QA engineer since then. And yeah, and so I've taken some time off from my last employer at one point, and then I found it a bit challenging to find additional jobs here in Germany. And so basically, just to sum up everything, um, I came across the Find a Job in Germany program here through some YouTube marketing, actually, while I was in the unemployment agency in Germany, and I realized, man, like the system here on on how the curriculum works for applying for IT jobs, they're totally different,
Mhm,
even from Canada,
mhm,
and basically, long story short. I came across the program and I loved everything that you're mentioning. You said like, hey, look, you mentioned about like how CV templates were set up and like Germany is like they don't want any of the fluff. They want to get straight to the facts, like a business card where it gets straight to the point. They want to know what you're capable of doing for the job position.
mhm,
And where I'm from, the CVs are built differently. It's kind of just like a lot of filler,
mhm.
and then they'll just test you with follow-up interviews, and they kind of just if they see you have prior experience, and they'll odds are you might get the shot. So it was different. It was a very big learning experience.
Can I ask you what you were
Yes.
trying by yourself before you joined the program? What were the main challenges that you were facing? You already said the way the CV is drafted, that's one thing. How did you try to solve it by yourself before you joined?
Yeah, well, I I initially was just applying, to jobs that were just more local. I wasn't really doing the numbers game, which I learned through the Fun Job in Germany program. And also at the same time, I was realizing that the CV that I was applying with was not formatted the right way, and the templates were just really not great, even from the base template that I got from the unemployment agency in Germany, because it's formatted for a broad spectrum of jobs, not specialized in the IT field.
Mhm.
And so that was a huge, huge challenge for me, and I didn't even realize it was a problem until I came across the program.
Did you get calls before, though, when you did applications, or was the outcome rather limited?
It was so limited. I got maybe one call in
Mhm.
like a month
Mm,
sometimes. It
mm.
was pretty tough. And so I started actually thinking the problem was me. I thought maybe, man, like I have all this experience. Like, there's got to be something that's missing. And thankfully I came across your program. And no word of a lie, like it's been priceless information.
Well, thank you
So
very
much.
much. Well, thank you
Yeah.
very much. For everyone out there who is watching right now, also a disclaimer from my end. Thank you so much for the appraisal, JD. But I
No
also
problem.
like to say we're not performing any magic tricks. It's
No.
essentially a systematic, step-by-step kind of streamlined approach. Naturally, first thing we did was we turned your CV upside down, inside out a little bit.
Definitely. Yes, needed a lot of work on that thing.
But that's perfectly fine, if I may say so. Everybody is faced with that in the beginning. That is perfectly normal. And then what do we do? What did you find to be the next step that would really change things for the better, would you say?
Yeah, well, honestly, everything that's structured in the program is fantastic because I didn't even realize like how the interview processes worked here, where there's like three different phases. There's the introductory phase, and then you have your technical phase, and then you have the final round, which is like a culture fit phase. And so what I realized in the introductory phase, it'll most likely be like with an HR recruiter, and they're going to be just listening in on some key words about the job role that you had prior with your last employer and making sure that you're bringing up some key points about the company itself, and also your mannerisms and your charisma. And a lot of it's very social oriented, I feel, and just hearing about like the key points that you're bringing out from your CV.
What do
And
you
then the
mean
tech.
by social
Yes.
related? Do you have a concrete memory or something in mind that that you
Yeah.
encountered?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I have a great pointer here that I felt worked every time across the board. Um, so when the HR recruiter, just asks you how are you, how about your day, you respond politely and formally, and then when she asks you about your job, don't just go into so much detail about it right away because she doesn't want to hear the Bible of everything that you're saying, right? She wants like it's really good that you just like give like a short summary. So let's say, what did you do in your last job? You're like, well, these were the tools that I worked with. For example, I was working with Jira for a ticketing system. I was using GitLab or GitHub for CI/CD practices, and then I was using Playwright for test automation. That was my main framework I was working with. Would you like to know more? It's always best to follow up with another question to break it up into small pieces. So that way it gives her the opportunity or him the opportunity to be like, yeah. And then instead of you having to try and give all the details of what you did in your job, you're breaking it down into small little sections. And that was huge for me
Mm.
because I have the tendency to get nervous and to word vomit. So it's good to just have a small little script.
It's true.
Yeah,
And also
really helped.
something maybe for everybody to know about this, especially when you're watching, let's say from India, from Pakistan, or from another part of the world where you are not speaking like JD, because JD, you have an American accent, North American,
Yes.
and that is easier for a German to understand. They are much more used to that. So the language barrier does not exist as much. But, ladies and gentlemen, make it clear here, he's just said how he's also gotten used to doing interviews, and it's totally something that you can practice.
Yes, I can absolutely say there were moments for me where I actually got so anxious or stressed about like these interviews that I actually felt like I have the tendencies or like the thoughts. I'm like, oh, I could postpone this. Maybe I'm not ready for this. Maybe
Mhm.
this isn't, but it's all just imposter syndrome. I really want to make this clear for anybody who's listening as well, because there are gonna be companies that you're applying for job roles, and some of them are going to have completely different expectations, even though the job role could be the same thing. Some of them are going to have some high technical stuff. Don't let that diminish your morale. Don't let it, because I promise you there's definitely gonna be jobs out there that are gonna be a great fit for you. Just keep going
Mm.
because eventually you'll realize, "Oh, okay, um, it doesn't mean that you're not capable of doing the job. They're just looking for somebody else with probably higher standards, and that's okay because like, there's different expectations for every different, company that are looking for different
So
things."
that's really interesting. So when we're comparing the job description and then when you got the invite for it, you probably go back to the job description to check when you applied for it and what was it that you applied for in the first place because you probably can't remember because you do
Yes.
so many applications. Um, you are saying, judging from the first raw round, the first call, going back to that JD, the JD does not generally say a lot about what is coming up afterwards.
Right, right. And so that was the thing too was, uh, when I got into, like, the second rounds, sometimes it's not even just coding, it's just all about, technical, discussions with, like, a tech lead, in the IT department, and, they will generally just question you on, like, on your basis of knowledge, and basically, just kinda like what I did with the what I was saying with the introductory rounds, just keep it short and scripted, and engage him in asking further questions, with short answers. It's
Mhm.
really, really a good standard, I feel, that helped me through.
Interesting. And then you would eventually see, okay, the job description as it's been drafted in the first place may actually end up being a good fit, or it
Yes,
actually turns out to be complete nonsense and that this is not what they want me to do. This is not a fit. I don't like this, or whatever, right? You only find that
exactly.
out as you go.
That's right, yeah, exactly, and what Jörg is saying too with that is that, like, don't just, like, let, because I had these, recruiters, sometimes they just have an overbearing presence of, like, high expectations, and, excuse me, don't let that don't let that affect your confidence because you know what? You're gonna have some of those companies, and then you're gonna have other companies where you're gonna just realize the demeanor is totally different, with the employers. They'll be more happy and kind, and you'll be like, "Oh, this seems like a nice place to work for." Like, and then you realize, okay, not all companies are like this. Some of them are going to be having, I need somebody who's my right hand guy. I want him to wear many hats, not just
Mm,
maybe QA engineer. And then you realize, okay, um, and when I realize that's happening, it took me a lot to get out of my comfort zone to do it. I'd be like, "Respectfully, I'm just gonna say I will end the interview now. I really appreciate your time, but I know what I'm capable of. And it seems like you're having a lot of high expectations out of the job role that I don't feel comfortable, being able to, uh, give you the performance that you're expecting from me."
mm.
And then that actually shocks them. They're like, "Oh, wow, not a lot of people do that." And they actually will remember you,
Yeah,
because he's like, "Hey, you know what? You seem to be competent in knowing what your skill sets are." And they actually followed up with me one time, to say, "Hey,
right.
listen, we had another role that opened up in our company that I think you'd be a great match for." It
Interesting.
really, really helps doing things like this.
We're actually going to deep dive more into that in the second part of our
Okay.
session. Companies rarely get feedback, true feedback on their internal processes when it comes to hiring and recruiting. And that is why, in your case, they actually remembered you. Probably it was a complete surprise or shock to them to hear you say that. Going back to a first round, you're also saying then it totally makes sense to still pick up an invite, even though that you may find it's not 100% fit, right? For the
That's
matter of
right.
practice.
Do it. Take all of the available, interviews that they're offering, and if you feel like the interviews are overlapping, then suggest some other additional time slots, guys. This is super key because actually after the first, like, 3 interviews, I started getting warmed up and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, It totally sucks in the beginning, but I promise you, just hang in because
That's the learning curve.
really, really is. Eventually, and ask for feedback. It's amazing how nobody asks for feedback at the end. And honestly, Germans as a whole will gladly give you the right amount of constructive criticism, and I swear to God, it really is valuable. The
Mhm.
stuff is really, really helpful. I'll deep dive with you when you ask questions about that later. I'd love to talk about the feedbacks instances I had, but
Perfect.
really great
Perfect.
to just accept all the invitations, guys. Really important.
Final
Um,
question really from
yes.
my end would be, JD, what would you say are the one or two main major takeaways from you now from this entire process? You've been in the interviews with several companies and you eventually got your offer. Um, what do you think does it really come down to, or what would you like to share as the most important thing for everyone that is watching?
Yeah, I could definitely give some info here. So, when I was initially starting out, um, again, like I was very uncomfortable at interviews, accept all the invitations, and I swear, like it just becomes like a normal thing that you're doing. It's almost like a job. Like when you start out, it's like you don't know, what you're doing yet, and then you get comfortable with it. And then the second thing was how you structure your like how you structure your answers about your role of what you do, whether if you're in dev or in QA. Short answers followed up by a question that really helps because it engages the HR recruiter. And and then when it came down to like the tech stack stuff, for me in QA engineering and automation, this may not apply to a lot of devs, but a lot of the tools, you guys got to stay up to date with what's happening right now. And at the moment, um, I'm not saying that Selenium is not going to be feasible because that's always going to be around because that stuff is really great foundational QA automation framework. But I would definitely say look into Playwright because that's going to be leading the way in the future for QA automation development, especially in Germany. And you will get a lot more invitations, I feel, in the QA field because I've noticed that when I've started going into Playwright and changing up my CV, I've received a lot more invitations that way because they're trying to modernize a lot of their QA departments, and it's faster, and you can do web and API testing on it, and it's Playwright also allows you to do a lot of frameworks, so it's not only front end based like Cypress. And I know Selenium is very strong, but guys, definitely look into Playwright. I'm telling you, it's not that hard to learn if you already have the foundations. And yeah, and that's definitely things I would mention. And I know there's one more, and I'm probably missing something. Always ask for feedback, guys.
Ooh,
Definitely do
yes.
this because I'm gonna go into it if that's okay, Jörg. If I
Please
can.
go ahead.
All right, let's do it. A lot of companies will have different second phases. They're structured differently. Some of them will give you an assignment. They give you a week to complete it, and then you submit it back. So they'll give you a bunch of requirements, basically, of what you need to automate with like a example URL, like that you can access through a user interface, and then you got to automate some tests. And so I would do that, and I was using Playwright all the time, staying consistent with the framework that I'm competent in. Totally do that for you guys as well. And I realized that when I asked for feedback, when I didn't get the job afterward, when they would confirm with me, I realized there's just some very minuscule things that I didn't apply that I realized are really important. There's always going to be bonus requirements inside the assignments you receive, and some of them will be like apply test design practices like page object model, like POM design. That like that's not optional, guys. Just do it because your competition is going to be doing this stuff too. Um, and use ChatGPT to help give you some really solid examples and then format it accordingly to what you've automated. It's really going to go a long way. And obviously, you're going to want to do some start scripts within your package.json file by activating the test execution file through command line. Small little things like that really will add up and help out because your competition's doing this. And when I received the feedback, I realized I was missing some of these things. And so then when I received other assignments, they didn't even have those bonus questions in there. I just decided to apply those practices to it anyway, and then you stand out amongst the rest of your competition. So
And
page
that's when
object
you
model
ended up being
design.
invited to final rounds.
Exactly. And that's where I realized, oh, I was grateful that I had this assignment that I messed up on. I asked for constructive criticism. They gave it to me. And then I applied all those things that I missed out on to my other automation coding projects for the second phase. And all of a sudden, I'm getting the third call. So that was really helpful for me.
Cool.
Um, yeah.
In principle, it also shows not just the principle of the learning curve as such, but that you can only pinpoint your weaknesses if you ask for feedback, of course. It's really something that we've encouraged everyone to do no matter what, even though it may be silly and you may not get a response. You're saying that most of the companies did get back to you. I have to say that is above average. On average, I would say 30% of companies will respond with something tangible. Either way, even if it's just every fifth or 10th company that will be getting back with some short summaries from the tech team that said, okay, this person did not do this and that, and this is why we decided to move ahead with another person. That will already be one little tiny puzzle piece to add up to the rest. And that is essentially what you also did. So that was a smart way to do
Yes.
it. And that was the key to success, I would say. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things too, is that when I was asking for constructive criticism, and just keep in mind too, like they would also suggest like certain things about like how I might have even formatted like test reports and stuff. Like they would also break down into some details about that, but some of them wouldn't get back at all. That's definitely happened to me very frequently, and
Hmm.
that's okay. But always ask because when somebody does take the time to do it, it's great. It really does help.
Wonderful.
And I
Wonderful.
hate I hate reading it because I know I'm like, this is about me.
It's
What did
like
I do
getting back a
wrong?
math test back in school.
Yes, exactly that actually.
And I would say that's generally also what you're dealing with, whether or not you're into QA or you're into dev. In the end, there is a whole own logic behind doing these assignments. They generally have not a whole lot to do with what you're going to end up doing in your job. So it's going back into a mode where you're just focusing on how can I solve this problem? And that is what you did.
Exactly.
JD,
Yep.
thank you so much for sharing your insights. Again, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be back with another recording with JD where we're talking about the two offers that he received. Either way, if you are interested in working with FAJIG, you can totally go ahead, get more info on our website, watch the video training, for example, reach out, book a get to know call with us. We'll then call you back, see whether or not it's potential fit, and then we'll be able to take things further. Thank you very much for your time, JD. We'll be back soon. All the best
Pleasure's mine.
to everyone. Take care. See you soon. Bye bye.
Ciao.